Morning, fish keepers. Cam here from the fishroom.co.nz, and we've done it again. We've made it to Friday. Let's be happy. Let's celebrate it by lifting up our cup of coffee. Believe it or not, that's a really good cup of coffee. All right, so thank you everybody for joining us. Again, we have ourselves a very special guest today. So we're going to go pretty short on the admin, and we're going to go pretty hard into the questions for that guy. But very quickly, congratulations to the winner of our Fish Wars winning circle that we cranked out yesterday. Thank you everybody who participated in Fish Wars, so that's also fantastic. We've got a whole bunch of new stock that's come in today and yesterday, so we're fully stocked up with everything we can when it comes to Repashy. We've had a massive Tetra order come in. We've been fully stocked up with APT again. We've got a huge Sarah order coming in probably on Monday or Tuesday. When I say huge, I mean absolutely huge. I've prepared all of our tanks. We've got a whole bunch of fish coming in for next week as well. And obviously earlier in the week we got our Oase filters coming, so that's exciting times. Good morning, Brian, Karen, and Maxie. And Maxie, I'm still really sorry that we didn't put you in the right drawer. They're not very nice in Upper Hutt at the moment, Brian. And hello, Cameron, as well. And also the winner for our review competition that we do each month was Stephen Dyer. So please, Stephen, get in hold of us when you get the opportunity, please. You left us a review on Facebook, which we really appreciate. So if you want to go into the draw for a $25 The Fish Room voucher, all you have to do is either leave us a Google review, a Facebook review, or any review on any of the products that you've purchased, and it puts you in the draw each month for a $25 voucher. There's literally all the admin I've got. I wrote down like 4 lines, and I did that on purpose because I wanted to get involved into this conversation.
Yeah.
Need more reason to spend money. All right. So without further ado, I would like to introduce. There we go.
Yeah.
Geoff Haglund. Thank you very much for joining us today. For those of you that don't know Geoff, he is the importer and distributor of Repashy Super Foods, and he is a Pleco fish extraordinaire. I don't know if I can blow any more smoke up your butt, but you know what I mean. He's pretty good at what he does.
Try. Yeah.
So thank you very much for joining us.
All good.
So give us a bit of rundown of who you are, where you've been, what you've done, and also why you have the name on all the forums of KrazyGeoff, please.
Well, KrazyGeoff started about 2007, 2008, I think. It was kind of, it was pre-Facebook for me anyway. So it was all the old style forums and that. And Geoff was kind of boring. KrazyGeoff seemed much better, especially after I developed multiple tank syndrome and had about 70 or 80 tanks. So
that's a good amount.
Yeah, and my philosophy was trying to recreate the environments that they had in the wild, which was a bit crazy as well. But yeah, in those days you couldn't just ask on Facebook. You had to do quite a bit of research, join forums. You sat around for a while until you felt you were asking the right questions, not to be mocked too much. Yep. And there, yeah, sort of it went on from there. And then you end up kind of writing articles and doing some crazy stuff, breeding some crazy things. And yeah, that's sort of how KrazyGeoff happened. Yeah.
Cool. So as I said before, you're obviously the importer and distributor of Repashy. So when did you first hear about the product range, and how did you first hear about the product range?
So they started doing fish about 2010. And about 2012, I started to get a bit excited about it, and you couldn't get it in New Zealand. So I found some websites. They were in America, and bought it on there. And as you do, you buy a small jar and, see if it gets through.
You do, yep.
And yeah, that came through. So that was good. So then I bought a great big jar, and it didn't come through. And MPI sent me the letter and asked me for some stuff. So I went back to the guys I bought it off, and they effectively blocked me because they didn't want to know, they didn't want to help.
Wow.
And just as a store, I mean, if you sent something to Aussie and then your customer came back and said, "Oh, can you give me the, how it's made and all that," you'd be sort of going, "Yeah, nah, sorry, can't do it."
Yeah.
But you'd say that,
Yes.
they just sort of go, "Oh yeah, no, we don't care. You're just one of 1,000 customers, so go away." So then a couple of years went by, and I thought, no, actually, I really want this. So I got hold of Repashy at the head office and said, "Oh, what do I do to get it in New Zealand?" And they went, "Oh, sorry, we don't have a distributor in New Zealand." And I said, "Well, what do I do to become the distributor?"
That's simple.
That's simple. And they went, "Oh, okay then. Well, this is what happens." So then I worked with MPI to do what you have to do with them. Got all the stuff off Repashy to, meet MPI's requirements, and then it kind of just went from there. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
And it's a bit challenging in the reptile space in New Zealand because New Zealand reptiles are not like the rest of the reptiles. So our lizards aren't frutivores. They eat a lot of insects.
Yes. Yeah.
Whereas most of the other lizards in the world eat mainly fruit.
Yep.
Yeah, so the big range of Repashy just isn't applicable here in New Zealand to our animals we have here.
Okay. Now, I told you I wasn't going to sort of throw you off with any curveballs, or I was going to try not to. But Maxie's brought up a really good point in the chat. She said it sounds simple, but it probably isn't. Can you explain a little bit more about the process of what it is that you've had to do to keep MPI happy and all that kind of thing?
So that bit was actually the simplest.
Oh, okay.
Well, yes and no. So the MPI rules at the time, I think they've just changed them. They were based around the old style of food. And the old style of food, your flake and all that stuff, you cook it till it's cardboard.
Yep.
And then you add some flavoring and you package it up and you're good to go. So Repashy's cooked to the bare minimum.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. And then it's ground really fine. So it's ground to 80 microns or something like that, which means that anything that was alive isn't anymore. So the MPI requirements for heat was obscene. And that it kind of, from Repashy's point of view, it de-nutrifies the food.
Yep.
So that seemed pointless. So the whole new generation of foods, of which Repashy's one of them, kind of didn't work with the MPI regulations. So luckily a few people at MPI recognized that and said, well, we'll give you your stuff you need and, we'll fully support it. And they've actually changed some of the regulations now. So it is much more real in terms of, that sort of stuff. Cool. The difficult part is actually, and more so now, is the number of people that are involved in the logistics
right.
of actually moving it, you know. So when you buy it at the warehouse door. You don't buy it at the port. You don't buy it at the airport. You don't buy it in New Zealand. You buy it at the warehouse door. So I've got to get it picked up from the warehouse, transported to either a seaport or an airport, depends on how I'm moving it, and then clickety-click all the way through. And there's companies that do that, you know.
So that's a process that you have to go through, as opposed to I put an order from Repashy and they send it to you. You do the order, it's at the door, and then you do the rest. Is that basically what you're saying? Right. Okay.
Yeah. And some people do that themselves, you know. But I'm a fan of consolidation. So there's companies that do that for you. So you've just got to find the right one, get the right pricing, and then they'll take care of all that stuff for you, which is really awesome. But I do know some guys importing stuff. They do it all themselves.
Right. Okay. So I'll go back onto track now to take away the curveball for you a little bit.
Sure.
So why did you decide to start bringing in Repashy? What was it particularly about it that you thought, damn, I need this in my hands. I need to be getting people to have this in their hands and feeding their aquariums and their reptiles with it?
So it was all about, it goes back to the KrazyGeoff about having the natural environment, I believe that we've taken these creatures from their place in the wild, which was more so in the old days. Nowadays, with CITES and all that, and a lot more stuff's not being caught wild. Yep. But they have their teeth are shaped a certain way, their lips are shaped a certain way, they feed a certain way. I mean, surface feeders, their bottom jaw sticks out more, right? So their actual mouth is pointing towards the surface because that's where they eat. Midwater feeders have a normal mouth. Bottom dwellers, the top lip comes over the bottom lip because they suck along the bottom. So the way Repashy is, when it forms its gel, you can pour it on logs. You can simulate the natural feeding of the animal, and that worked really well with my philosophy of having a natural type environment. I don't have wooden tanks that in the world there wouldn't be wood in that environment.
Right, makes sense.
So yeah. So it just, that's why. And then because I needed to buy quite a lot in order to be a distributor, I kind of needed other people to buy it.
Yep.
On one hand, and on the other hand, it's the shit, So yeah, people should buy it.
Yeah.
For the nutritional value. Yeah.
I'm definitely in that camp with you as far as that goes. As far as ingredients and nutrition goes, I think it's pretty close to second to none. It's right up there. And I've been very close on it.
So it's like, well, yeah, people will just want to buy it. That was kind of how I felt.
Yep. All right, cool. So what's your vision with you distributing Repashy, and where do you kind of see your company and Repashy going in the next 10 years?
Yeah, so I mean, the main problem is New Zealand's so small.
Yep.
And I mean, I don't know the stats on reptile keeping, but for fish keeping, they reckon it's about 10%. 10% of homes in New Zealand have a fish tank. So I thought, well, that's still a good number. You could make a profit still working on that. That's not quite true, but that's all right. So the raw food, if we look at raw foods for cats and dogs, right? So in the last few years, that's become very popular.
Yep.
People have appreciated nutrition for those sorts of animals. I don't think people quite yet appreciate nutrition in an aquatic sense. So, some of my biggest customers are actually the zoos and aquariums and stuff within New Zealand. So, I mean, I'll keep doing it for them anyway.
Yep.
And then in the next 10 years, depending on what happens economically speaking with the COVID and all that, I think people will over time start to appreciate it more. And there'll be other foods that come out as well.
Of course.
So a new generation of food will be appreciated, and those animals will be valued more.
Yeah. So what I'm kind of hearing is you feel there's going to be a movement away from your standard cardboard flake, as you kind of put it earlier, and just putting something into the tank to feed your fish, and people are going to be most likely or potentially looking at the highest quality they can actually give their fish because they're living animals and they're trying to upkeep them to the best of their ability, so to speak.
Yeah. And I mean, you need less. I mean, everyone still looks at the Repashy and goes, "Oh, that's quite a lot of money for such a little amount of thing," right? but then you start talking to them, and then you explain that, yeah, but you mix it with water, so you actually get 3 times the amount. So you kind of have to say, well, that 85 grams that costs X. I really need to compare that to a 28 gram jar of normal food. Sorry, the other way around. A 200 and something gram jar of normal food in terms of straight cost. But also because you're delivering a high nutrition product, you actually need less. So it does last longer.
Yeah, I have to agree that long run I think it works out more economical by the time you mix it up. And again, you're feeding less because it's a high nutrition, so the fish are getting what they need quicker and easier, and it's less waste. And like long run, I think it is a better option. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I had one customer that, they were spending $10 a week on normal food.
Yep.
And I said, okay, but that 85 gram jar is going to last you a month.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't cost $40. So you're saving $12, $15 a month, right?
Yeah.
Which means that at the end of the year, you're actually, $140 more in your pocket.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the unfortunate part was they got it, and that was good. But the unfortunate part was they only had $10 a week.
Right. Yeah.
And therein with lies part of the problem too within New Zealand. Yeah. It's the I'm sure a lot more people want to do more, but they don't have more.
And that totally makes sense as well.
Yeah. So that's just a thing.
So obviously you feed this to your fish, or previously have. I'm not even sure if you still have fish anymore. What are some of you do still have some?
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. So what are some of the results that you've seen when feeding this food in your fish? First-hand experiences and stuff like that.
Yeah. So anyone who's seen my fish says my fish are always. They use the F word.
The fish word.
No, the FAT word. I use plump.
Yep.
So they look better.
Yep.
They don't look emaciated. They have better colouring.
Mm-hmm.
Because I've had bottom dwellers always, and they cave and hide anyway. Mm-hmm. I haven't personally noticed the lack of shyness, but some people have said with I call them normal fish. So if it's not living in the bottom in a cave, it's a normal fish, right?
Yeah.
They will come out more. They school better. The main thing was it did actually they bred better, and the fry were more able to feed naturally. So an adult fish they'll adjust quite quickly, but a fry hatches and they haven't learned. They've got their genetic knowledge in how to feed.
Yeah. And
how to eat rather. So if you can present food that's in that format, then that has a better survival rate for the fry.
Right.
Was it bottom scratcher? Yeah, bottom scratcher is one of the smelly ones. Yeah.
It's an acquired smell.
Well, it's insects and stuff.
Yeah.
They smell.
Yeah.
Cardboard doesn't smell so bad.
Yeah. All right. So while I was doing a little bit of research upon you, I found out that you may or may not be a fan of plecostomuses. And that you may or may not have bred some pretty impressive species of them.
Yes.
Can you please run through some of your breeding achievements when it comes to plecos, please?
Yeah, cool. I wrote a list. So the first one I ever bred was, other than bristlenose, so we'll get them out of the way first day, right? So gold, brown, calico, longfin, shortfin.
Mm-hmm.
So there's 6.
Just before you go any further, did you ever get anywhere with the greens or the reds that I vaguely remember talking to you about trying to do?
So the reds I got quite away with. So the reds are a colour morph, and it takes about 3 generations to set a colour.
Right. Okay.
So I believe that the reds was something to do with a calico and a gold.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So I was on my way then, but then life happened and things change. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, the L002 was the first one I bred, and I remember them. They had quite a cool the sexy lady dance that the men would do, to attract the ladies. That was fascinating. That was very much like a bee, actually. They'd dance in a number 8 pattern to try and encourage the female into their cave.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, that was quite interesting to watch. So I do remember them because they spawned, they hatched 2 days before my first trip to the L numbers days in Germany.
That's great timing, isn't it?
And that was awesome. That was like freaked me right out. But that's okay, because I had a guy that worked at Hollywood Fish Farm that was coming to look after my stuff. Yep. So he took care of them. That was good. So that was L002, L104, which was and I always get the Latin names wrong, the Pinnacamanacus. And that is now
quite high bodied, aren't they?
Yeah, but they're kind of little.
Yeah.
And then subsequent to that, they were scientifically described, and there's 3 L numbers that were collapsed into that one fish. And some of them are on the list now, I understand. L46, L134, L239, L129, L034, L270, and most of the 140s in New Zealand came from me.
Right.
So whether or not you want to...
Well, I was just going to say, for those that don't know how plecos are described, they're described with an L number, then basically that's how it's done. So that's a fairly impressive list of the letter L that Geoff's just read out. So
I've probably got real names. I don't remember the real name for L002. That was some sort of tiger panac.
Yeah.
46 is your zebra plecos. 134 is the Colta Compta.
Yep.
239 is the bluefin panac. 129 is the Colombian zebra. L034 is the Ancestris ranunculans. L270 is your chocolate zebra. Yep. And 140 is your big band tiger plecos, they were called up when they first came in here.
So I think if you were into plecos 5 to 7 or so years ago, we had a great number of those particular ones, maybe a little bit longer. There was a lot of them hanging around, and I'm assuming a lot of them would have come out of your fish tanks and spread around the countryside. It was a really good time to be a pleco keeper in that kind of time. Yeah.
I mean, mainly I shipped to North Island. But those outlet stores would have shipped to the South Island too. Yep.
Definitely. Okay, so obviously you've run through some of your things. I'm really interested in how you went about breeding the L239, because it's quite a rare feat that actually happened.
Yeah.
Touch on that a bit.
So 239 and 34s was the other one that was interesting. So 239 is the bluefin panac, which may or may not. It's a Barry Ancestris now. So when they get the L number, is before they've been scientifically described. So after they get scientifically described, then they get a Latin name, and then the L number gets unused, except by fish keepers.
Yeah.
Because they all know. Because some of these have really cool names, which is all about selling them.
Yeah.
And different countries, different regions will will call the same thing a different cool name. I mean, a good one is those other things I had with the big spots on them. But there's 3 different fish, and they all got the same name.
Big gold nuggets?
No, because those 3 different fish became one scientific name.
Did they?
Yeah.
Oh,
So the
okay.
queen gold nugget, yeah. It'll come to me. The inspector, Hypanthus inspector, is one of the ones with there's 3 different fish. So one's a Barancestrus and 2 are Hypanthus.
Yeah. Is one of them not the Medusa, the vampire spot or something similar to that?
Yeah, similar to that.
Am I going down a different route? Yeah.
So part of their description is how they eat, right? So the bluefin panac implies that it's a panac, so implies it should have wood.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a Barancestrus beginni, I think is how it's pronounced, which means it's specialized vegetarian with a really long digestive tract.
Yep.
Which is a totally different way of eating. If you give it the wrong food, it digests too quickly. The back end of its digestive tract never gets used, and so over time collapses, and then the food starts to rot in their stomach, right? And then they get bloated and all sorts of good things happen, and it's just lights out really, and it was all to do with the wrong sort of food. But anyway, so the old toothy nines were really interesting. It was kind of an issue where my pH was dropping really rapidly, and so when I did the water top ups, it would go up again. So it was kind of zigzagging and going all over the place. So what I did was I used, instead of using some sort of chemical to alter the pH, I'm a fan of using oyster shell. Oyster shell is calcium carbonate, and so as the pH gets more acid, then it dissolves more of the calcium carbonate, which neutralizes the acid. So it regulates the pH quite nicely. Interestingly, here's a Geoff fact: snail shells are made out of calcium carbonate as well. So sometimes when you get an explosion of snails, your pH actually gets affected because in order to make the shells, they're sucking all that out of the water.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting. Yep.
So if you get a snail explosion and then you eradicate them all by removing them rather than just killing them and leaving them there, you can actually get a pH spike.
Very interesting.
Because you've reversed that. But they seem to like the gentle pH shift, the bluefins. And if you look at what's going on in the wild and the different rainy seasons and stuff, then the waters that come through in the rainy season passing through bits of country that are different to where they're actually living, and so you can get subtle changes in pH.
Right.
There's nutrients and stuff going on as well, but they're really hard to measure. pH is hard to measure. In addition to the other KrazyGeoff stuff, I used to do readings on every tank twice a day, and I wrote a database system to manage it. So I could look back, if something started spawning, I could look back and plot their pH over time, temperature over time, and nitrates and all that stuff over time. So, but the bluefins did like the gradual pH shift, and I believe it was replicating something that was occurring in their wild environment, because those ones were wild caught fish. See, when you've got non-wild caught fish, people say they're often easier to breed, and that's generally because the fish that started life in an aquarium doesn't have the natural cycle. That occurs in the wild.
And alerts and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so you emulate your triggers, but you don't have to be as clever as if it was the wild.
Right. Yep.
But yeah, no, and then so I got home from work one day and there was 6 or 8 of these little eggs, hopping eggs. They could jump about that high.
Right.
And that's not me being tricky, being as high as my head. That's like actually that high.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was really weird, and I was kind of freaking out because I thought, well, perhaps the other fish are going to eat them.
Yep.
But then you got to remember that these are highly vegetarian fish. Slightly different to the Auschwitz eaters.
Mm-hmm.
So they weren't really interested in the fry and eating them. So they were good. And then they spawn like about every 3 to 4 weeks.
Right.
For a 4-month period. Yeah.
Right. Do you know what was triggering that constant spawning? Had you worked that out, or were you still thinking it might have been the gentle up and downs of the pH? Or
well, I'd cottoned onto the pH, so at that point I let it drop, and then I actually changed the frequency of my water changes to be less.
Okay. Yep.
So that I could have a longer period of drop.
Yep.
But they were funny. They bred February through March for about 3 years. Yeah.
Yep. And then that was their period. Nothing else.
They didn't seem to breed outside of that. But
so
whether or not that was related to my water supply at that time, post Christmas holidays, more people go back to work. So I don't know if that was something naturally occurring in the water system as well.
Because February through March is obviously our summer coming into our autumn, which would have that made it leaving winter into spring over in the Amazon type time. So could have been wild caught fish. Could have that been they obviously don't know the calendars, but they know other things like that. I don't know. Just throwing ideas out.
It could have. I mean, I had a weather system as well plugged into my data collections that I was doing because I was crazy. And I over like 5 years of half hourly readings, because that's how often I was taking them. Luckily, that particular weather system was automated, so I didn't have to write them down. Yeah. I really found no correlation between breeding and air pressure.
Right. Okay.
I mean, storms equal air pressure drops, right? Yep. So a lot of people have had great success doing water changes when storms happen.
Yes, particularly with corridors.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So I never went, oh, it's about to rain, I'll do a water change. So the air pressure with no water change had no correlation to breeding.
Interesting.
So the question might be, is it the water change?
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Right. So, humans go, oh, it's getting stormy, I'll do a water change. Oh, the fish have detected the change in atmospheric conditions.
Yeah.
Yeah, perhaps they just detected the water change.
Yeah, I'm with you.
One of the great questions. Whereas if you're breeding stingrays, I know the guys that have bred stingrays, the key to breeding the stingray was using a hose and letting the water splash down onto the top of their ponds, just like rain would.
Yeah.
And then now they spawn them whenever they want just by raining on the
splashing
on the pond.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. All right. Were the fry of the 239s easy to raise, or were they detrimental, or was there any issues in that one?
Yeah, so I was a bad fry raiser.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. My capture and manually work on rate was not good in those days. So I left them in the tank. And they were good as gold. I never lost any fry.
Right.
I know, and at that time, I think I was the third person in the world to breed them. I think they'd been bred once in one of the zoos in Germany, and I think a guy in France had bred them. But that was, I've done it. No photos didn't happen, sort of thing.
Yeah, understood. Yeah.
But it might have happened. I don't know. Now, subsequently, people that have spawned them, they have tried to manually raise the fry, which didn't work too well. I don't know if they were super sensitive to the water pressure. I mean, my tank was only 65 centimeters deep. I don't know if that creates enough pressure from leaving them at the bottom to trying to bring them to the top into a hatchery. But I just left them. So yeah, but I had no deaths. But very small numbers. Yeah.
So it's quite normal for them to have a small clutch. They're not a big spawn type of fish.
No, I mean they get really golf bally looking.
Yeah.
But they are quite a small fish. But I don't think I had a clutch over 10.
Well, okay. And I'm naturally assuming that you're feeding them Repashy.
No, that was
you weren't pre-Repashy time.
Pre-Repashy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what foods were you feeding them to grow them?
So that was Jabiel, Novatab, and zucchini.
Okay. All right. So you said they were predominantly a algae-based eating fish. Is that correct?
Yeah.
And the Novatab's obviously more of a protein-based. So why was the decision to go with that? Is that just because they're growing, they need more protein to go? Sort of thing?
Yeah. So the Novafect.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Novafect.
Yeah. That's the greenest of the JBLs.
Yeah, so that'd be the Fect. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Cool. Yes, the Novatab's more of a shrimp.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So Novafect. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. I think from memory, the Novafect's got a little bit of wood chips in it and stuff like that as well.
Yeah.
It's definitely sort of aimed towards the green eating plecos and catfish and stuff.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. Cool. Any other fish you want to sort of talk about in your time you've bred? I know you did leopard pleco, leopards 134s or something like that.
134 leopard frogs.
That's the one, which are absolutely beautiful fish.
Yeah. I don't know that we'll get them again. They were very much. I mean, Picoltia. I think that's how you say it. They all breed the same. So raise the temperature, drop the temperature, good to go. You can almost dial them up. The 034, the Ancestris ranunculus, was actually quite an exciting one. I'm not sure if that had been bred before.
The one with the big ass, fluffy
everything. Kind of.
Yeah.
So that's its head. Yeah. Big flat Medusas.
Yeah. A face only a fish keeper could love.
Yeah, that's the ones. Yeah. So they're quite interesting because they actually live in the wild with the Hypancistris zebra.
Right. Okay.
So they're a fast current, way more meaty eaters than your standard Ancestris. They really don't have wood in their environment.
So for those that don't know about the Ancestris, that's basically the bristlenose family, what we'd consider more common bristlenose plecos that we see, your golds, your browns, and all that sort of stuff. That's the family of them.
Yeah. And they like a really fast current. And they have some super sticky eggs. And they lay on the roof of the cave normally.
Right, okay.
And because they're such a wide, flat fish, they're almost like a cross between a normal fish and a flounder type thing. They're really, really wide for their bodies. So they're able to cover the eggs like that, and they sit with the eggs just under their chin, a bit like a whiptail sort of scenario. Rather than if you look at them in a normal cave scenario, the fish will be right. The eggs will be sort of more in front of the fish.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. So they sucker onto the rock, have their eggs under here, and then that's how they protect the eggs from going away. So they're a bit different, but they were really cool. They were, and I even had an albino one of them that I didn't realize I had, but they were. Well, it wasn't a true albino because it had black eyes, but it was a white fish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are they the ones that can start multi-splotchy white colours and then go really dark? Or am I thinking of a different fish?
No, so the two main one's the starlight type one, which
Yeah.
looks like a night sky. The one you're thinking of is the one I'm talking about, and in their stress pattern, they have these big white splotches all over them.
Oh, so that's a stress pattern.
Yeah. But when that settles down, they turn into it's a blacky, inky, blacky grey colour. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely not a brown as you'd kind of imagine it. Like it's a dark.
Yeah.
Dark.
Yeah. But yeah, no, they were pretty neat. I spawned them in the smallest little tank. Yeah, it was just crazy. It was like, I always said a happy fish is a horny fish.
Yeah, fair.
That was one of my things. So to a point, it doesn't matter. I mean, some physically need certain things.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, these ones, they really surprised me spawning in their holding tank. Yeah.
So did you have quite a few spawns of them? Was it just sort of one or two?
Oh, yeah, no, they spawned for
lots.
Ongoing for a long time. Yeah.
Okay, nice. Yeah. Did you notice anything particularly triggered them or didn't trigger them, or was there things that you had to do to make them keep going, or was it just once they're in there, once they go, they just do what ancestors do?
Yeah, I think they were quite fans of Barry White. So once they figured out what to do, they pretty much carried on.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, cool. So that's basically the end of the questions that I've got as far as you and your role with Repashy and the fish that you've bred. So if there's anybody in the chat section that have any other questions, please fire them away because we're getting pretty close to the end now. What I do like to do, or I'm trying to do towards the end of the interviews that we're doing, is do something called the School of Six. So it's just quick 6 questions just to put you on the spot and see how you go. So
cool.
If you're ready for it, let's go. So my first question is, and I know the answer to the first 2 of these already, but the first question is, do you prefer cats or dogs?
Cats.
Really? I would never have guessed that one.
Yeah, well, cats are cool because they crap in the neighbour's house. And dogs, you've got to pick up their crap, right?
That's true.
So that,
Okay. So my next question is, coffee or tea?
Coffee.
I also knew the answer to that one pretty easily as well. All right, this one might stump you a little bit. If you had to go to a concert of either the Venga Boys or Aqua, which one would you go to and why?
I've never heard of Aqua.
You've never heard of Aqua? Barbie Girl.
Oh, right, yeah. No, none of them. I'd poke my eyes out and stay at home.
You probably want to poke your ears out, to be honest.
Yeah.
All right. So, if animals around the world could talk, which one of them would be the most filthiest?
Ooh, which one would be the most filthiest? I would say sheep.
Is that because there's so many of them around here?
That's because there's lots of jokes about sheep and Australians.
That's fair. Okay, so what is your unicorn fish?
Well, unicorn fish. Well, I had 3 of them.
Mm-hmm.
So I reckon it would be probably that blue-eyed panache.
Yes. Oh, yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gorgeous.
Which you can get. I mean, they're on the list for New Zealand.
Yeah.
It's just the coins.
Yeah. I can imagine there would be a lot of coins that need to change hand to get one.
Yeah.
Okay, and so the last question I've got here is, what's your favourite fish of all time?
My favourite fish of all time. Oh, I'm going to soft out on that and say catfish.
Oh, that's weak, man. That's real weak. Good get it from you. Right.
Yeah, I just like my catfish. Yeah.
I'm well aware that you've spawned a lot of other catfish that aren't just plecos as well. So I guess I can let you away with that. There's been a few cories in the list as well.
Oh yeah, a couple. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so that's basically all that I've got. So again, thank you very much for being with us and answering some questions. I'm sure everybody's enjoyed it, and the people that are going to watch it later today, I'm sure will enjoy it as well.
Cool, man.
Because of which you're obviously the Repashy importer for the rest of the weekend, I've put a special on all Repashy products. That's the fish food as well as the reptile stuff. So from now until midnight Sunday, I think I put 15% on them, which is quite a large discount. I was feeling pretty happy this morning. So get them up to that website and trade me. So yeah, if you're needing some Repashy sometime this weekend, is absolutely the best time to buy it. So thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it. Yeah. All right, guys. Have a good one. Happy fish keeping. Catch you later.
Cool, man. Cheers.
Thanks very much. See you later.